And when we went to this particular tunnel, first of all, it's a U-shaped tunnel, hand dug into the side of the hillside by the road. The dog tag was in pretty poor condition, especially on the front. But when you turned it over on the back, you could make out a name and a serial number and some other information. Hey YouTube, how are you? Kamusta? This is Kevin from Kevin in the Philippines. I am out here on a beautiful beach in the WWII area. This is just like 20-30 minutes from my home here in Dumaguete, and it's a place that I can come and walk on the beach and just enjoy the nature and the waves. Today's story takes place in one of my favorite places in the Philippines, which of course is, if you don't know me already, Corregidor Island in Manila Bay. And I won't go into detail about the history of Corregidor in this video because it really is something that I've covered in past videos and plan to cover more in future videos. But all you need to know is that it's a really historic place where World War II battles took place, and it's kind of frozen in time. And I say frozen in time because the island was turned into a protected place because of all the history and everything that happened there. But you can still hike and explore there, and sometimes you can do overnight camping. In fact, they used to have a hotel there. I won't go into all what's going on right now with the island because it's a little bit in a state of flux right now. But so back in 2023, I was still able to travel there and go visit on Corregidor, and I was able to explore some caves and things like that. Well, I call them caves, but they're really tunnels on the James Ravine part of the island. And just for fun, just to orient you, I'll show a picture of Corregidor Island, a map, excuse me, and I'll put a little circle on the area where James Ravine is. Anyway, it's all a jungle now today. 80 years ago, it was kind of like the surface of the moon. It had been bombed so much. But the tunnels that were there were made by the Filipinos and the Americans, and then later the Japanese used them, and then the Americans came back and retook the island. But all that stuff is still there to explore, and for the last 80 years people have been going and hiking and exploring there, and sometimes you find little artifacts. I'm not a relic hunter, I'm not a treasure hunter, I don't care about stuff like that. In fact, even things that I found when I was a kid growing up in the Philippines, I've already actually donated to a museum. So I don't even have any more artifacts anymore, but there is things that you can just stumble across when you're exploring these places and exploring these tunnels. So this story is about the time that I was exploring in a tunnel in James Ravine, and I came across this object in the dirt of the tunnel, and it turned out to be a dog tag, which is really exciting because a dog tag means it's something personal. It's something that belonged to a soldier. It had their name on it, it had their serial number. And it was just really exciting to find this because I thought, wow, this belonged to a real soldier. There's a group of history buffs, or kind of what I call Corregidor nerds, that I would meet up with every now and then, and we would go hiking together, and they were with me on this trip. And when we went to this particular tunnel, first of all, it's a U-shaped tunnel, hand dug into the side of the hillside by the road. The dog tag was in pretty poor condition, especially on the front. But when you turned it over on the back, you could make out a name and a serial number and some other information. What I did was I took out my phone, took a picture of it, and then reversed the image so I could see the name. And the name Daniel W. Crowley came up, and it had his serial number. And Dan's story ended up being super, super cool. The first thing I did was I Googled him, and then I found some YouTube interviews, because it turns out that Dan lived to the ripe old age of like 99. And he had done several YouTube interviews and talked about things that happened to him during the war. And here it was, 2023, he had just passed away. And I wish I could ask him how his dog tag got there. It was interesting though, the tag was kind of bent in the middle. And I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if he took that off in frustration and like kind of tried to crumple it and throw it away. Because a lot of the men, when they surrendered, they were really like devastated. They wanted to fight, and some of them wanted to fight to the bitter end. And anyway, going back to Dan's story, I can't tell the whole thing in one video because, man, it's It's phenomenal. But he started, I think, in the Air Force, and he was on Bataan, in Bataan or Luzon and Clark Field. And then he was surrendered in Bataan. And rather than surrender and follow that order, he looked across the ocean at Corregidor Island, kind of like how Apo Island is behind me, somewhere back there. Where's Apo? Back there. Anyway, it's a long swim, and he decided to swim to Corregidor Island and continue fighting over there rather than surrender to the Japanese. So then he got absorbed into the Marines. I think it's like the 4th Marines. And unfortunately, eventually Corregidor Island itself fell and he was surrendered again. But anyway, the reason his story is even more spectacular than that is because he became a prisoner of war, a POW, and he was sent to Palawan and was one of the men who helped build the airfield there. And because he had like an injury or something, he requested to be transferred, and he very narrowly escaped being killed by the Japanese there in Palawan. There was actually a really horrible event that took place there. Anyway, after doing all this research and finding his interviews on YouTube, I tried to find out if there was any family members who were still around who I could maybe give this dog tag back to, give the tag back to the family, back to his heirs. And I was shocked to find out that Dan's widow was still living. She was a bit younger than him, and she was in Connecticut. And I was put in touch with her through some folks who run a YouTube channel who had interviewed Dan. And long story short, I was able to mail that dog tag back to his widow, Kelly, in Connecticut. And, obviously she was thrilled to get it, and just as probably shocked and surprised that I was. But there's something I want to say about that tag, which is kind of interesting, which is I still feel like to this day, I didn't find that tag. That dog tag found me. Really did. I feel like maybe that was Dan just kind of saying, hey, I want to, give my wife a little reminder that I still love her and care about her, and this is something that she can have to remember me by. Yeah, maybe I'm just getting over dramatic, but so I sent that tag back to her, and she sent me a gift in return. It was really sweet. It was a ball cap from the USS Bataan. Dan had forged a really good relationship with that boat, and they had a hat, that said USS Bataan, and Kelly sent me one of those hats, and just as kind of like as a thank you for sending her the dog tag. Anyway, I guess if there was a takeaway to this story, first of all, I was very lucky to have found this tag. Again, I feel like it found me, but the takeaway is, hey, I hope everybody still appreciates history, especially here in the Philippines, World War II history. And I know it was 80 years ago, but gosh, we got to still remember what happened here, guys. And we got to remember everybody who fought and the sacrifices they made for the freedom of Filipinos, Americans. There's so many stories that I could make an entire different YouTube channel and probably talk about it. But sadly, it's not that popular. There's just not that much interest in World War II history like there used to be. When I got to the Philippines when I was a kid, it was the 1980s, and World War II was only 4 decades old. Can you believe that? So now it's 80 years, 8 decades. And not a lot of people remember as much as they should, but we can if we want to, and especially when history is so tangible and real and right in front of you, it becomes like something that is very real and something that you should remember. I was able to attend recently in Manila a special event. It was called War and Memory, 80 years of remembrance. It was remembering a lot of stuff that happened 80 years ago. The Battle of Manila. It was also sort of like the Philippines achieving their freedom, regaining their freedom. And that was really special. I got to go to that. I'll put a little picture in the corner, or a couple pictures in the corner of me attending that, because World War II has always been important to me, and it's something that has been special to me. Anyway, leave a comment below if somebody from your family served in World War II. And if they served in the Philippines, that would be even cooler. But if they served anywhere, hey, I much respect for them. But yeah, leave a comment below and maybe talk about something that is important to you about World War II history, or maybe you have a family member who has an interesting story. I would love to hear that in the comments. And again, it's not as popular as it used to be, guys, or is now. I wish it was more popular, but maybe by us talking about it in videos like this, we can keep the memory alive of all those soldiers who gave their all, and in Dan's case, almost died. His story is just incredible, and we can keep his story alive by talking about stuff like this. Okay, I'm gonna close out this video here. It's probably running a little bit long. I get excited about stuff that's related to World War II, but thank you for watching. Thank you for giving this video a like if you found it interesting or entertaining. And I will catch you guys on the next one, and I will say mabuhay. Bye, guys.